Hello and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. We're back after a bit of a holiday break, so welcome back to the podcast. We're up and ready to go for the new year, and with me I have Dan.
Hey guys.
So we've had a couple of games since the last episode, or I should say since our interview with Jackson Irvine, in which I chatted to him about the Leeds and Derby games that were coming up over the Christmas period. So we had a nil-nil draw with Derby, which I suppose on reflection is probably quite a good result given where they're sitting in the table. But then that was followed up, or should I say, preceded by a pretty disappointing 1-0 defeat to Leeds, despite dominating most of the early stages of that one. Probably the most disappointing was that 1-0 loss to Bolton that we had, as well as the 2-2 draw with Fulham where we led 2-0. But then most recently we've had the 1-0 win against Blackburn in the FA Cup. So a range of results there, but I guess I'll start with asking you, Dan, which of those was I guess the most positive result, and then which was the most disappointing?
I'd have to say the Derby draw is the most positive,
Yep.
partly because of, as you mentioned, where they are in the table. Also, it with the reverse of how the first matchup against them went, where we got a
Yeah, absolutely.
fairly good shellacking. Um, so that was a good positive and a good that was a well fought for draw and a well earned point. I think the Fulham draw is the most disappointing result for me because we had got to a winning position and we were playing so comfortably, and it was just silly errors and silly fouls that allowed Fulham back into that game. And it just, after the other games that recently, since Adkins has taken charge, have, like, we've shown vast improvement, and we've basically, apart from that Fulham game, stopped conceding those late goals that have, taken so many points from us
Yeah.
this season. So that was very disappointing for me.
Yeah, I think you're right there with that Fulham game. That was probably the first time under Adkins. I mean, I suppose there was that late goal against Brentford, but we were already in a pretty dominant position. That was pretty much the first time under Adkins that we've seen those similar failings that we saw quite a lot under Slutsky, particularly towards the end of his time, with those silly last-minute goals really costing us a lot of points. And so that was, yeah, pretty disappointing in the Fulham game. Bolton, disappointing for a different reason, I suppose. Just the fact that that was such a winnable game and a game we really should have put quite a few goals past them in terms of, I mean, 4-0 in the reverse at the start of the season and also just by merit of their table position. Really disappointing to drop all 3 points in that one and really dangerous given how close we are to that relegation zone. And I guess the other one is the Leeds game. I mean, to be so dominant early and to be looking so good, to have such a calamitous way of conceding was really frustrating to see. And obviously, extra sort of bragging rights associated with that as a derby game would have been really good to win and really frustrating to lose in the end. Yeah, like you say, I think probably Derby's the most positive out of them, given the fact that they're travelling so well and to keep them goalless, especially after the shellacking earlier in the season, was quite good to see. And then always good to get a cup win. I mean, I'm always in the camp that I like a bit of a cup run. Gives a bit of optimism in the squad. A winning mentality is always a good thing. If it means we can get some of the squad players playing a bit more like Diomande and guys like that, then that's always a good thing in my books. Obviously, you don't want to be, injuring your key personnel in it, and I think that's always people's worry if we get too deep and if people start playing 2 games a week or 3 games a week and they get a bit tired and a bit more injury prone. That's always the worry. But yeah, I can't complain with a good cup win and into the next round and who knows, getting a decent draw against a top level Premier League club could be a bit exciting and you know, as unfortunate as to say, it might be our only chance to play those big clubs for the next couple of years might be in the cup. So looking forward to Forest in the next round, and I guess we see where we go from there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that. With the cup, I'm the same as you. I think that every competitive game is a chance to get points or get wins on the board, but a cup is they're always good opportunities, and especially if you get a nice win there. We got that win after a couple of disappointing results, and that might just be enough confidence, starts building within the squad to then put in some more positive performances. But Nottingham played very well against Arsenal, I believe,
Yeah, for
to
sure.
get through. So it should be a good challenge.
Absolutely. if we move on from those games, we'll talk about the game coming up against Reading in a second. But obviously, with it now being January, the transfer window is now opened, and it's always a time of the season where everyone starts speculating about players coming in, players leaving, and unfortunately, given the state that we're in, generally the discussion is more around players leaving. Obviously, rumours around Bowen is probably our most sellable asset, alongside Grzycki. Are probably the main two that we've seen rumours about. Adkins has said that we're not going to sell any players, we're not going to entertain any offers for players, but how likely do you think it is that we don't sell anyone before the window closes?
Is Adkins saying that the shop window is closed? Is that what he's trying to say?
I believe
um,
so, yeah.
it's yeah, it rings just a little bit too familiar to that. I'm not like it. It's a football club and it's a business, and like if the offers come in and they they meet the whatever the appropriate values are of the players or whatever, then I don't necessarily think that we'll just flat out be saying no to anything. I do believe that it will be hard to pry some of these players away from our club. Like they'll need the offers will. I mean, it's January anyway, so offers are normally going to be on the overs, but so I don't know. I can't. I don't think anyone should leave. I hope no one leaves. But to I, it's a hard claim to necessarily believe after recent events.
Is there a value that you would accept for a player like Bowen, or is he basically the sort of player that, for essentially no price, that you'd basically say, well, it's actually just better for morale and better for team continuity to keep him at the club, even if, I mean, I know it's not going to happen, but even if an offer of like 15 million came in, or does it get to a point where you just go, look, it's ridiculous money, we just have to accept it, try and find a cheap replacement and go with what we've got.
Yeah, it's a tough one. That's where I don't think that we should sell Bowen. But if an offer came in, um, although he just signed did you sign a new contract
Yeah, I think
recently?
it was at the start of
Can't
the
remember.
season, if I'm remembering right. I think it was for
Yeah,
an extra two
yeah.
years.
So he's got a. So I think like if offers come in for Bowen, like in the 10 million plus, like I think the club will entertain them at the very least.
Well, it's interesting because you look
Because
you look at someone like Assombalonga, who everyone sort of traditionally thinks of as a really top, well, decent championship striker, and I think he was sold by Forest, if I'm getting it around the right way, for 15 million to Barra, I think is where he's ended up. And his strike rate apparently is actually worse than Bowen's. So when you think about the fact that it's Bowen's first season in the
yeah,
championship as a senior player, he's actually tracking in terms of valuation that he should actually be going for that sort of price range.
yeah, he is in outstanding form. And like yeah, it's difficult. Like I'd like to like if he was going to go, like it'd be just that around like the Harry Maguire, Andy Robertson, how we made so much money off those couple of sales. Like I wouldn't be happy, but like it's sort of money which that's you should be able to effectively reinvest in the squad with that amount of money. If he was to sell for less than 10 million, like, and that's just a figure I'm picking. It's probably not remotely accurate. If I had more chance to think about it, I'd probably find something a bit higher. But yeah, I don't want him to go, but I think there'll definitely be offers for him with the form that he's in.
And then there's a lot of players out of contract as well, talking about Bowen re-signing, which was very unexpected to me, purely because of the way that the club seems to be running down a lot of players' contracts at the moment. Max Clark is, I guess, comparable to Bowen in terms of first season in the senior team breaking through, and he's out of contract in the summer. But there's also a number of pros out of contract in the form of McGregor, Dawson, Myler, Odebajo, Diamande, Hernandez, Larson, all of those guys. which is concerning in a way because you think after last summer we had such an exodus of players, and you think, geez, well that's a lot of them basically. It can't get much worse, and we're looking set to have a similar summer next year as well, and it's just crazy to think. Look, there's a part of me that just thinks guys like Dawson, Myler, Dumande, maybe even McGregor, Hernandez are definitely going because for one reason or the other, either the club doesn't think they're good enough or they think they can get someone cheaper in um, through the window. I don't know how really when you think, you're going to pay a transfer fee and then wages, and these guys will probably be happy to re-sign at a decent, affordable wage. Um, you just think there's just so much turnover in the squad at the moment. Do you see any of these guys staying? Do you think they'll all leave? Do you think, I don't know, a couple of them might stay?
I would hope that a few of them at least would stay. I
Well,
think
I mean,
like it's
Dawson and Myler are on record as saying that they're more than happy to sign a new deal. They just haven't been offered, a reasonable deal.
yeah, that's concerning.
I mean, you've got players
Like
saying, I want to
the
sign a contract. Normally, it's players saying, oh, I want to get a, pay raise, give me a better
yeah,
contract. But these guys are
yeah.
saying, we want to sign a deal.
I I think like it's some part of this has to be that some part of it is that they're still trying to sell the club, and
Yep,
some part of it is that they obviously don't know where we're going to be next year,
yep.
and so we can't like it's hard to. I mean, maybe Milo is happy to accept any contract that's put in front of him. Well, I don't know, but maybe the club's not willing to put forward a contract to Milo until they can know what's going on. The problem is like with these contracts running down, if they're out of contract now, then they can be approached
I
already as to sign pre-contract agreements, can't they?
I think that that's a
Within 6 months of
European
the end of
thing.
their
I
contract.
think it's not an English thing. So I think within England you can't do that.
Oh, okay.
So for instance, with
Oh,
City
okay.
going after, sorry, I should say Man City
Yeah,
going after Sanchez, I don't think they can get him to sign a pre-contract. But for
yeah,
instance, like if Juventus went after Sanchez, they could get him to sign a pre-contract. So I think that's how it works.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
Fair
it's
enough. Well,
interesting
I'm sure
because I
they,
mean,
they,
sorry.
yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, even if they couldn't actually sign, I'm sure they'll still get contacted, and the managers would be working their things, and they'd have things lined up, even if we don't do anything.
But it's crazy because even if, putting it bluntly, if the club looks at guys like Dawson and Myler and says we don't think they're good enough to be in the squad, um, if there's uncertainty about what league we're in, it's actually to our benefit to sign them up because worst case scenario we get relegated, they would surely be good enough for League One. And if they're happy to sign up now, knowing the risk, then so be it. And if we stay up, they're surely still good enough to be squad players. Dawson's pretty much played every game this season, and Myler's basically been in the team when he's fit. They'd be good enough to be squad players, and if nothing else, just sort of background figures giving some continuity to the squad.
Yeah, I think you, I think the key word in all that was continuity, and like it's 10 players. Like you can't let that's a team. You can't let a team's worth of players walk out for nothing,
Yeah.
because then you've got to go out and replace 10 players worth, and maybe Dawson hasn't been at his best this year, but you still then need to go out and find someone who is as good or better than Dawson to come into the squad. Otherwise, you're not better off by having let him go.
Yeah, so hopefully, fingers
And
crossed, we can.
that'll be the challenge.
Yeah, that's absolutely the challenge. Hopefully, we can get a few of those players signed up to deals pretty soon.
Can Hull in these final couple of minutes make this one-man advantage count? Odabajo, again a lovely pass over this time from Myler. El Mohammadi, he receives the ball back again. Odabajo gets past his marker, plays the ball into the middle, looks to Snodgrass. Can he tee up a shot for himself? Surely! The ball's going to drop, and Diamandis feeds there! The Tigers strike! The comeback is complete! For the first time this season, Hull come from 1-0 down, and they have made that extra man count.
So we just heard there Jake Livermore's winner in our last championship season against Reading to come from 1-0 down to win in the corresponding home fixture of that season. And we face Reading again this Saturday. It's a bit of a grudge match, so to speak, with Nigel Adkins having been sacked by Reading before his spell at Sheffield United. So there's a bit of history there. And obviously, we've got some shared players with Paul McShane and I think Stephen Quinn's still there. And I'm pretty sure they have Vito Minoni in goal as well. So a bit of crossover between the two teams. Dan, do you have any other fond memories of games against Reading? I mean, that was the only one I could really think of as a real sort of standout in recent years.
Yeah, I can't really think of any of the matches that we've played against them. That none of them really springing to mind when I think of this fixture. So unfortunately, I don't have any memorable matches to share this week.
Not a very memorable opponent, I suppose. But there is the common personnel at least, which makes it a little bit interesting in that sense. They haven't been travelling too much better than us in the table either. They lost to Birmingham last time out 2-0, and I guess when we complain about the loss to Bolton 1-0, losing to Birmingham is in a probably similar category, with Birmingham also pretty terrible this season. What sort of chances do you give us in a home fixture against Reading at the moment?
It really depends. Like I was reading today that we have, I think Larson's fit again, and there's a couple of other players which we're waiting. Adkins is waiting on to confirm whether they're available or not. And it sort of, I think it depends on which team we can put out. If we can put out our best 11, I still believe that we have, we've got the players capable of beating anyone in this competition, regardless of how poorly they have played it at times. And if we get the right people on the field, I've got no problems in backing us to get past Reading at home. And at this point of the season, it should have already been like established, but we really do need to, with the position we're in, we really need to start taking as many points at the KCOM as possible. With 20 games to go, we need to make the most of these opportunities, and hopefully there's a nice crowd there to make it nice and as hostile as possible for Reading and as difficult for them. We really need the 12th man at every opportunity.
Yeah, and I guess our last home game, I believe, was that 2-2 draw with Fulham, where we coughed up that 2-0 lead. So at least we're starting to string some decent form together at home, and it's just a matter of keeping that focus and not conceding those silly goals. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting. Hopefully Larson's fit. I think he fits in quite well in the midfield at the moment, and I think Myler's basically back to full fitness as well. So Adkin should have a bit of choice there as well, with I think Stewart also being fit. And by all reports, Evandro was great against Blackburn in the Cup. So we're starting to get a few of those central midfield options being available, which is always good to be spoiled for choice. And then, of course, Jackson Irvine as well, who's playing pretty well. A funny story I heard about Jackson Irvine recently, I know some people might cringe listening to me mention anything about FIFA, but a friend was telling me that apparently in FIFA, Jackson Irvine's stats, regardless of where you put him on the field, basically striker, left mid, right mid, attacking mid, defensive mid, centre back, left back, whatever, his stats pretty much stay the same, which is essentially, I guess, saying that he's the perfect all-rounder. So it's quite funny to see that he's played in pretty much every position for us as well. I think he's played, in that sort of advanced second striker or, centre forward sort of role. He's also played out wide and as a defensive player as well. So it's great to have him in the squad as a very flexible option.
Yeah, he's really starting to come into his own in a City shirt, which is great. The last few weeks he's been outstanding, and he's laid on a couple of good passes, and I think he's nabbed an assist or two recently.
Yeah, I think so.
So probably, I suppose it would have been the Fulham game because that's the only one we scored in recently. But yeah, no, I think he's starting to go really good, and he seems to really be thriving in that number 10, that behind the striker, which I think is where he was playing mostly for Burton last season
Yeah, I think so.
in that similar sort of a role. So I suppose that perhaps just goes to show that when you can get like your players into their preferred position, that they'll really start to shine.
Absolutely. And do you have a score prediction for this one?
Oh, I'm going to go 2-0 to City.
Very nice. I like it. Yeah. They're only 4 points ahead of us, so it's a really important game in that sense that if we can get the 3 points, it really starts to help us actually climb the table. I feel like we've basically been sat in the same position for the last month, really. The teams below us starting to catch up on us a little bit, so we really need to start pulling away again. I'll probably go for a win as well. I think it might be a 2-1 sort of win, but Reading's form has been so average, and we really were overdue a good home performance. So, yeah, I might go a 2-1 win in that one. Um, but I think that's about it. So we've got that game to look forward to on the weekend, and then a game the following week as well, where hopefully we can also pick up the 3 points. But we'll be back at the same time next week to chat about that one. So until then, thanks for joining me, Dan,
Not a problem anytime.
and thanks everyone for listening in. Until next time, come on, City. You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
City's on fire. We're going higher and higher. There's no turning back 'cause you're out.